"You think I wanted this," she whispered, her voice shaking as hospital lights flickered above her brother's fragile body. "Tell me what you would have done if your only family was slipping away and money was the only thing standing between life. Payment must be clear by morning, or we cannot continue the procedure." Myra stood frozen beside the narrow hospital bed. Her younger brother Arav lay pale beneath thin white sheets, his small chest rising in uneven breaths. The smell of antiseptic burned her nose. Machines blinked in cold rhythm, indifferent to fear. The world had narrowed to numbers on a screen, and the amount printed on a bill. She could never afford. She worked as a maid in one of the tallest towers in the city. She dusted shelves lined with books that no one ever read. She polished silver trays that carried meals she would never taste. But none of that mattered tonight. Tonight her brother's life had a... She moved like a shadow, quiet and careful. Staff members knew their place. Speak only when spoken to. Be grateful. Stay invisible. But that evening she stepped into the private study without knocking. Arjun Malhotra looked up from behind his wide desk, surprised. He was known across the country as a ruthless businessman. Sharp suits, sharper mind, the kind. About it by lunch. He saw fear in her eyes before she even spoke. Her hands trembled as she explained. The surgery, the deadline. The amount. The number did not even make him blink. What came next would change both their lives. The city outside was loud with traffic and neon light. Inside that room, the air felt heavy. Arjun studied her face, reading something deeper than desperation. She was not asking for charity. She was offering dignity in exchange for survival. Mira understood the weight of what she was stepping into. Poverty teaches lessons quickly. Pride does not feed you. Pride does not buy medicine. Pride does not stop a heart from failing. That night, she made a choice no one should ever have to make. And by morning, the hospital had its payment. But stories like this never end where people expect them to. Myra's life had not always been defined by hardship. Years ago, she lived in a small village where mornings smelled of wet soil and fresh tea. Her father worked in the fields until his hands cracked and bled. Her mother hummed soft songs while cooking lentils over an open flame. When their parents died in a road accident, Mira was 19. Arav was 10. She still remembered the day she signed papers she barely understood, promising to be both sister and guardian. She left school. She left dreams of becoming a teacher. She came to the city with one suitcase and a frightened boy holding her hand. She learned to wake before sunrise. She learned to stretch every coin. She learned that kindness in cities often comes with conditions, but she also learned strength. Every Sunday she took him to the park, where he ran like he had wings. "You wanted to be a pilot one day." He said the sky had no ceiling. Then came the diagnosis. A rare heart condition. Surgery required. Costs unimaginable. Mira sold her mother's jewelry. She worked double shifts. But the final amount still towered over her like a mountain she could not climb. That was when she walked into Arjun Malhotra's study. What neither of them expected was how silence would shape what followed. In the days after the payment, Myra returned to work as if nothing had happened. She cleaned floors. She ironed shirts. She kept her eyes lowered. But rumors moved faster than truth. Staff members began whispering. They looked at her differently, some with envy, some with quiet judgment. No one asked about the hospital. Arjun watched all of it. He was used to power, used to control, but something about Mira unsettled him. She did not ask for more. She did not try to rise above her role. She did not seek attention. She carried herself with a calm that felt unbreakable. One afternoon, during a high-profile charity gala at his mansion, a guest made a careless comment within earshot of several employees. Some people know how to use opportunity very well. The words hung in the air like smoke. Myra stood still, holding a tray of glasses. Her face revealed nothing. Her silence was not weakness. It was armor. Arjun heard the comment too. and for the first time in years, he felt shame. Conflict does not always roar. Sometimes it grows quietly inside walls built from pride. Arjun had built an empire from nothing. He knew hunger. He knew struggle. But success had wrapped him in layers of distance. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what helplessness felt like. Watching Mira endure, whispers without flinching forced him to confront himself. She never mentioned that night. Not once. Instead, she visited the hospital every evening after work. Aurov's surgery had gone well, but recovery was slow. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and hope. Aurov would smile weakly and ask about airplanes. Mira would squeeze his hand and say, "The sky is waiting for you." One evening, Arjun followed her there. He stood outside the hospital room unnoticed, watching through the glass. He saw the way she adjusted Aurov's pillow, the way she wiped his forehead, the way she smiled even when her eyes looked tired. This was not a woman who traded dignity lightly. This was a sister fighting a war no one else saw. The next morning, Arjun called a staff meeting. The house buzzed with confusion. Employees gathered, unsure what was coming. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone directly. But his words carried weight. Respect is not a privilege given to the rich. It is a right earned by character. The room fell silent. He announced a new policy. Full health coverage for all employees and their immediate families. Education funds for children. Fair wages adjusted immediately. Gasps rippled through the staff. Then, he did something no one expected. He turned to Mira. "You saved a life without asking for applause." That is strength most people will never understand. Her eyes met his for the first time without fear. Silence can be louder than shouting. In the weeks that followed, something shifted inside the mansion. Whispers faded. Judgment dissolved into something closer to admiration. But the real transformation happened within Arjun. He began visiting the hospital openly. He funded research for children with rare heart conditions. He used his influence not to dominate, but to protect. Mira did not ask for any of it. True strength does not beg to be seen. It simply stands. A month later, Aurov was discharged. He walked slowly but proudly out of the hospital doors. Sunlight touched his face like a blessing. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. Hospital staff who had seen Myra's quiet devotion stood in silent respect. Some employees from the mansion came too. No grand speeches. No flashing cameras. Just recognition. Arjun stepped forward and handed Aurov a small model airplane made of polished wood. "The sky has no ceiling," he said softly. Aurov's eyes lit up. In that moment, Myra felt something she had not felt in a long time. Relief. Not because money had solved everything, but because dignity had survived. Months later, when people spoke about Arjun Malhotra, they mentioned his business success. But they also spoke about his foundation for children's health, about fair treatment of workers, about quiet generosity. Myra continued working for some time, but not as a shadow. She began training for evening classes. Arjun insisted the company would sponsor her education. "You gave everything for your brother. Now it is time someone invests in you." The city still moved fast. Towers still scraped the sky. But inside one household, power had been redefined. Mira never told anyone the full story of that desperate night. She did not need to. It was not a tale of scandal. It was a story of survival. And survival is never shameful. Years later, when Aurov finally boarded a real airplane as a trainee pilot, Mira stood at the airport watching him walk toward the runway. The smell of fuel filled the air. The wind tugged at her hair. Tears blurred her vision. Beside her, Arjun stood quietly. "Some debts are paid with money," he said. "Others are paid with change." Myra nodded. She had once believed she lost something that night in the study. But looking at her brother stepping toward his dream, she realized something deeper. She had not lost herself. She had protected what mattered most. Silent dignity is stronger than public judgment. The crowd at the airport began clapping as the plane lifted into the sky. It was not a grand ceremony, just family, friends, and a few staff members who remembered where the journey began, but it felt like victory, not the loud kind, the lasting kind dot in a world quick to judge and slow to understand. Myra's story became a quiet reminder. You never know the battles someone is fighting behind their silence. You never know the price someone has paid to keep their family breathing, and sometimes the most powerful change begins with one painful choice and the courage to carry it without bitterness. If this story moved you, share where you are watching from. Tell us in the comments what strength means to you. And if you believe that silent heroes deserve to be seen, subscribe for more stories that honor courage, sacrifice, and the quiet power of dignity.